We're ready.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your patience as I come flying in like a crazy person from one meeting to another. And so glad that those of you who are with us today could be with us this afternoon. Earlier, Kim shared with us the presentation. She sent it out on Thursday or Friday of last week, so everyone would have a chance to look through the PowerPoint. On our agenda today, we have just a few slides. The bulk of our work is going to be around confirming the information that's in the brief, addressing anything that needs to be finalized or any fine points there, and then make sure that we have any concerns, questions, issues addressed so that we can move forward with any addendum. I think it's important to note that our work focus will be around making sure that the brief is ready for consideration for all of PEPSC so that the state board can do what's necessary should they be given the okay to move forward with pilots coming up. So thanks, Kim. So the next slide is going to be just our norms, and Madison did a great job at the last meeting of going over these. I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time going through them, but let's just make sure we're respectful of one another. I could probably be the worst violator of this, so y'all just feel free to tell me, Marcy, hush. I will not take it personally. And so if everyone's good with that, we'll just move forward. And Madison, interrupt me, or Kim if I'm going too fast or not clear. But at our last meeting, we talked about the focus, and we had specifically, we were looking at bullets 3, 4, and 5 on this slide. The other issues that are in italics pretty much are set, and we agreed to those with one exception. If you'll recall, when we talked about the apprentice license, it specifically references the associate's degree or 60 credit hours towards baccalaureate. We thought there might be some with a bachelor's degree who had a desire to start as an apprentice in order to get their footing under them, make sure they were going down the right career path. So we've made a request for that to be edited to be associate's degree, 60 credit hours or higher for individuals to be able to qualify there. I think that's the only formal edit that we're requesting to the brief at this time. Kim, am I right there? Madison?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. And so then the rest of our time, we really spent looking at and need to make sure we're good with the 3rd, 4th, and 5th bullets here again, the professional progression, the evidences of successful practice, and support necessary to move forward. Kim, Madison, am I missing anything there?
No, I think you're good.
Okay. So then if we move on, we have the document that Kim shared with us the last time that had most of our comments and things on it. So if we move specifically to number 3, the progression, we've got the apprentice license, which is 1 year with the ability to renew twice. License 1 is up to 3, but it's non-renewable beyond those 3 years. License 2 would be the same. And then license 3 is a term of up to 6 years. Someone noted that you could possibly have someone 12 to 15 years in the role before they were ready to move over to license 4. But then you could have a bulk of teachers that just come in at 3 and 4, so that would not be an issue. I don't expect that we'll have large numbers taking that long. So we'll open it up to the floor. Questions, comments, thoughts about this particular section? Anything that's addendum worthy or of particular concern to anyone?
Does anyone need that link for the Google Doc one more time that we were putting the comments in, just to refresh any questions that we brought up last in our last meeting?
That would be great.
Thanks.
Yep, I just put that in the chat.
Thank you, Madison.
If folks have anything that they want to add today, I can put it directly into this document. They don't have to go and make additional comments. But if they want to gather the comments that they've already made or just reread the ones that are already there, feel free to use the link that Madison already added into the chat.
I think it's important to note that several of the items that we were discussing, and I'm big about this as well as anybody else, is my brain immediately goes to, okay, how am I going to put this into practice? So implementation items, we can make notes of those and summarize those, and that's a lot of what's posted in the original document. Ultimately, your pilots, whoever chooses to do that, will be going through what implementation will look like, but it's certainly helpful to identify where we know that there are gaps or pitfalls that people might fall into. So it's important to note that as well. All of this will be put together, and I would hope, my expectation as a PEPSC member would be that all of this information and feedback is going to be shared with anyone who's going to be piloting the program. So I will just put that out there. I don't know that it's going to be formally put in any of the documents that are going to be shared at this time, but there'll be a working document for the groups to work through. Thoughts, questions?
I have a question. What would our, what we currently, how we have people that have a permit to teach or emergency license, with this new structure, where would they fall in?
They could potentially fall into your apprentice or your license one. Depending on how much time they have under their belt, they may fall into a license two, but that's one of those implementation pieces that somebody will have to work out and figure out.
Okay.
But at a minimum, a license one requires the EPP affiliation and the public school unit. So that's where your emergency doesn't have to be associated, that'd be your residency, but it could be the same. It could be that level of person that would associate, because they've got to have 18 hours. But again, it's going to be a little bit different, and pilots will work through those. But my suspicion would be it would be apprentice or license one.
Okay.
My brain goes there too, Andrea.
Dr. Horn also has her hand raised.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Dr. Horn?
Yeah, so I'm curious, did we ever clarify what the difference between, so under section 2, between B and C, the license 1 and the license 2? Because license 2 doesn't look like it's any different than license 1.
Kim, do you have the full presentation? I think there's more information on that one.
I think it's in the notes. Hold on, let me share those. Sorry, it's taking a minute to load. And when you meant full presentation, Marcy, are you talking about the updated draft?
Yeah, the one with the PowerPoint presentation that went to the board the last time. I'm trying to get mine to load. I've got it on an external hard drive. I don't have it on my computer, so.
Let's see here. Let me just share this. Can you guys see the model update?
Yeah.
Okay, so just to answer the permit to teach in emergency the emergency license piece, I think Andrea asked that. Depends, like Marcy was talking about the years of experience, but let's go back to license 1. So you can see it's the baccalaureate degree or higher, 18 hours of relevant content, must be affiliated with an EPP or PSU that guides routing. And then license 2, this is where they're the teacher of record.
So the only difference is that in license 1, they're not the teacher of record, but here they're the teacher of record. So then,
As far as the requirements, is that what you're talking about, Dr. Horn?
yeah, so because like when you look at the document,
Enter.
under the credentials of the person entering at each point, there's really no difference between B and C, or license 1 and license 2, on our document that we're working in.
Right. Because it has the preparation sponsor for both.
Right.
I think that's what it lays out, correct?
Correct.
It doesn't
And so
actually
I
have
know that
anything.
we had these. Right. So we had these additional things on this one. Using the following tools to provide evidence. So is that still going to be a requirement for license 2, or how would we?
What, for being a teacher of record?
For just being at a level license 2, like to be able to get in at a license 2, because on our document, the way we have it currently written, there's no difference between license 1 and license 2.
Right. So which requirement are you asking about?
So I see on the PowerPoint, we have the additional requirement, right, of the evidence of mastery of standards, either through testing or micro-credentials or the other reliable instrument, right? So I was curious are those not going to be listed here for license 2?
I see what she's
Right. So we should add
Right.
add that piece.
I'm not sure which document the pilots are actually, like, what's actually going to be presented or piloted. Is it the PowerPoint or is it this document? So it would just need to be
No,
clear.
it's the brief. It's not this document.
Okay.
So under step 3, we might need to add wording that clarifies, like Dr. Horn is saying, where license 2 or license 1, you're not the teacher of record, but license 2, you would be. Because I see what you're saying, where if you were just to be like reading the document, it would look like anyone could come in at 1 or 2 at the same credentials.
And what differentiates being able to come in at a 2? And it's that addition of the demonstration of kind of that beginning level competency, right? Whether it's the test or micro credentials or.
And I think we talked about in our last meeting also that some of that stuff will potentially be up to the LEAs and those pilot programs. So if they feel as if someone coming into the position is qualified to come in at a license 2, then that's kind of one of those things with the pilot where we were leaving it less specific and more up to those piloted districts.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think there does
Started editing right there.
need to be some distinction in there, like you're saying.
And I get that, and allowing the pilots to have some flexibility, but I think there still needs to be some parameters around that flexibility, so
Right.
that it's just not like, oh, well, I think this teacher should get more pay because license 2 comes with more pay, right?
Right.
So what are those parameters of what would be? And because I know they're going to be still testing some things, right? But there's got to be almost like whether it's a menu of choices or
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was going to say is a menu of choices or some examples of what it might look like, because otherwise
That's a different working group.
it's a different, right?
So, and then we could say, Dr. Horn, would you agree, and demonstrate beginning level? I think somebody had said the exact wording there. Beginning level.
Yeah, we had discussed in the previous ones like a beginning level of competency around the standards.
Competency.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on 3? I think those were the main, this one about license 2, and then making apprentice include a baccalaureate degree were the main 2 areas of focus last time.
And another group is talking about what effectiveness it will look like.
The actual tools.
Uh-huh.
Yes. They are looking at that, not as specifically as you would have for how it's going to be implemented, because we don't necessarily want that kind of specificity in law.
Okay.
That will come at a later stage.
Okay.
And did we want to clarify, because I know it was in the notes of the previous document, that they have the choice of 1 or 2, and they have to do 3?
Oh, right. So put the or here, Aaron.
Yeah, so for license 4, it was 1 or 2 and 3.
I think I'd added that to a different document. And then got changed. Okay.
And then again for F, 2, 3, 4, and 5 need to be indented a bit more because they're a sub of 1. And then I think the same questions again, like, are there ands and ors in here? Do they get to pick 1 through 4? just pick one of those, or do they have to have one and 2, 3, or 4? Sorry.
There's a choice.
So they could just pick one of those for the renewal.
We could also put it up here and using one of the following tools. Provide evidence of mastery of standards. How do you feel about that? I don't know.
Is National Board and master's degree actually, though, a subset of that one? Because it's not really a tool, is it? The National Board
No, it
and
was-
master's degree would not be a mastery, an evidence of mastery of standards. I think that should probably be
It's more
back-
coursework that can count for
renewal.
renewal.
But that's not a subset of Roman numeral or Roman letter I. It would be number 2, right? There I don't see how National Board is evidence of mastery of standards of practice assigned to their license, because they can get National Board in any area. Am I overthinking it? Y'all tell me.
So National Board can be utilized for renewal.
Right. And coursework can as well.
Right.
And does it need to say towards master's degree, though? Because you could do an undergraduate class.
Right. We can just say coursework.
Right. But to me, that's not a subset of little I there, or little 1 there. It's separate and apart, because I don't see that as evidence of mastery of standards of practice. I do see EVOS and tools designed to measure impact as being there.
Okay.
So I would disagree. Because I do think that National Board certification, I mean, you have to demonstrate that you have met the standards within the National Board's practice through your evidence.
Right, but you can be a second grade teacher and get nationally board certified in reading or literacy, and it doesn't have to be specific to second grade. So that's why I don't know that that's specific to what you're actually licensed in. Your national board certification doesn't have to be directly what you're licensed in.
But right now you don't get paid unless you are teaching in the area of your certification.
No, you still get paid.
Okay.
You can be a middle grade generalist and be teaching 10th grade math and still get master's pay and still get national board pay.
Okay.
You have to be teaching in the area of your North Carolina educator's license. And if you hold national boards, you can still get national board pay. You can go from being a classroom teacher and being a guidance counselor and get national board pay as a guidance counselor, even though you hold national board certification in a teaching area.
So do we want to make it specific to the teaching assignment? Because the license for CE.
But
I don't want to touch that. What I'm just saying is
that
national board.
in law.
Right. Yeah, no, what I'm saying is that national board and coursework for renewal aren't necessarily, to me, a subset of little I there, which is a providing evidence of mastery of standards. Because that doesn't, just because you can achieve national board certification or take courses towards an advanced degree doesn't mean you've got a mastery of standards. You've mastered what national board says you're supposed to have, but it may not be exactly aligned. So I just didn't want it to be a subset there under that.
So then back to my original question are Roman numerals 1, 2, and 3, are they ors, or are they ands, or are they?
They're ors. Roman numerals to me, 1, 2, and 3 would be ors, just like you can renew your teaching license right now through different ways. You can do PD with your district. You can do national boards. You can do coursework. That's not different from how we do renewal now. It's just being more specific in this, I think. as those being options. So it would be the renewal tool options. There would be Roman numeral 1, 2, or 3, and then 1 and 2 are subset as options of Roman numeral 1.
So is it correct the way I have it now, Marcy?
In my mind, it is, because it also could be a combination of any of those. If you do one course, you may still have to do something to do student impact in order to get whatever renewal requirement there is. It could be a combination of any of those. But it's clear to me because I live in that world. Not everybody does.
Sure. Do we want to mark out the master's degrees so it's not limiting the coursework?
I would like to, if we can get some consensus from everyone
I don't
else.
necessarily want it to just say for master's degrees in law.
I would agree with that.
Someone could already hold a master's and they're seeking a doctorate.
I'll take it out of here too.
But so, Marcy, to your last point, it may need to be 1, Roman numeral 1, and Roman, because you said that just doing coursework or national boards is not sufficient.
Well, if you look right above that, though, the line, Kim, if you'll scroll up just a smidge, it gives it's renewable, and then the renewal tools are listed there as descriptors. So I think for me, it's intuitive that it's any combination of those.
But if we're saying, but if we say there's ors between Roman numerals 1, 2, and 3, then that means I could just do national boards and I would be able to renew my classroom excellence license. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. But I may not be meeting EVOS. And is that okay? And I think
Philosophically, there are different. That's a very different question for me.
right. So that's what I'm saying. I think the idea of thinking about the ideology behind license for classroom excellence. Do we want classroom excellence? Because I would argue that national boards could show it, right? Because again, you're submitting student work. You were showing how you have an impact on student learning through national board process.
But not everybody who has national boards is also, not everybody's going to meet EVOS.
Correct.
So what I don't want to do is get at the point that we're at right now. I don't want it changed in legislation. And that's really what this brief is trying to identify, is what legislative flexibilities the state board might need initially to pilot. I think the pilots will tell us whether or not that's real. And we've got to keep in mind that people have gotten to renew in the middle of this pilot program. I'm not comfortable, and it's me, taking that option away and saying, and again, not everybody's going to have EVOS. And until they pilot and measure what these other tools may be, there's not going to be a way to measure growth and standards for everybody. So then how are those people going to be able to renew?
Right. Oh, I agree. I think we might be arguing the same point.
Yeah.
But yeah, just making sure that it's clear with what we submit up.
Do we want to add this also to AL down below? Little Roman numeral 3 down below, so then,
I would say so.
okay.
It's in the PowerPoint presentation, so yes, I agree. I just want to make sure there wasn't going to be an expectation of a different standard for that group, but I think you're good.
So, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Kim, with the changes you made for Roman numeral 2 above and taking out master's degrees, should it see,
Yes.
it says national board certification and coursework. Should it be national board certification or coursework?
Maybe we should have coursework separate,
That's a possibility too.
like this. Is that better?
Do we want a bit more specificity about coursework though? Like, is that just CEUs or is that like actually going and doing coursework at IHEs?
Oh, well, it can be either one.
Right, because your community colleges.
Right, or community colleges or
Yeah.
approved DP. Does it have to be through an approved DPP? So like coursework, can I go take PE 100?
To count towards renewal?
Right. If we don't have like
They
any
take different courses as long as they meet the CEU requirement that's set by statute.
Okay, so then maybe that's what that statement needs to be.
Something along the
It's
lines
set
of
by
coursework.
statute?
No,
No, mm-mm.
Currently accepted thing.
CEUs. Like coursework geared towards the CEU, the requirements there. Some phrasing so that, like she's saying, like someone's not going and taking like archery and being able to renew their license.
In elementary ed.
Yeah. Just like a specification, like coursework geared towards CEU requirements or something like that.
I don't want, again,
Specifies it already in law as far as digital learning
right.
and then reading, and then it has
Yeah.
general.
Right. So maybe it needs to say coursework aligned with current statutory renewal requirements.
I don't think that's necessary for
You know? Okay.
I don't either.
actual statute, because they're going to say it's already in statute.
Yeah, and when you look at national boards, there's two different guidelines for the initial national board process versus the renewal process, and I don't want us to get into the weeds of that and
Okay.
for that one either. Okay, are we ready to move to 4? Do we feel like we've got 3, a good handle on where we are there?
Sounds good. Yes.
Okay. So evidence of successful practice necessary to progress. I think we've got some of that's going to be built in to what's in number 3. When you talk about progression and evidence. Or is it not, Kim, is that not a little bit redundant? Because 3 is professional
It is a
progression and
little
evidence. Okay. So are there any other thoughts around the evidence of successful practice?
I don't know if we discuss it here or not, but I was wondering about for schools that do not, if you have an apprentice teacher, not having that expert teacher enough to go around to support the apprentice. I have some schools that could do that all day, and others are struggling because we have a lot of RLs. So I was just wondering, is that something we address here, or is another committee addressing that potential problem?
So advanced teacher, that's in a different working group.
Okay.
Also, some of that's implementation and how that would be implemented.
Okay. All right. Got you.
Because an apprentice wouldn't be in a classroom by themselves. They would have to be in a classroom with
Right.
someone else, correct?
That's right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And that's just a red flag to me. For some schools, they would struggle to provide for that need.
That has been on the radar for the implementation piece.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Do we want to remove 4? Because it references what we have above.
We've got evidences there already. I would feel comfortable doing that. Is there anyone else who feels like it's different to the point that?
But this is so. I'm sorry. I feel like I.
No, go ahead, Dr. Horn.
So again, so we're talking about the items that are up in number 2, right? So the items that would be needed to meet a license 3 would be what they're asking for here. Correct? Under number 2. Go up a little bit more.
Yes.
There we go. And so this is, I guess, where my question is. So the PowerPoint has kind of what those parameters are. So thinking about, for example, license 3D. The PowerPoint has some parameters around the requirements to demonstrate effectiveness. And I understand, the point of this document is to see what legislative things need to happen so that a pilot can happen. So if this, I guess my question is, where does the implementation happen? Because if we leave it just like this, plus requirements to demonstrate effectiveness, does that leave the door open for everybody to use anything that they want to demonstrate effectiveness? Or does that assume that the things that are in the PowerPoint are what will be the guardrails for demonstrating effectiveness?
So that's
the latter. Kim, is that not correct? The latter is that the working document now is so that the General Assembly will know, if they, assuming that they give the state board flexibility.
Then the state board would decide on those rules of implementation and also the piloting pieces, because
In conjunction with PEPSC.
As far as I know, I mean, that is up to the state board.
Okay,
But
so this would
yes,
just be
so the state board would be making those
the guardrails.
those detail, yes, those guardrails.
Okay. Because I think that's, for me, to be comfortable in saying my name is on this, yes, I would just want to make sure that those guardrail recommendations are there. I get it, not wanting to put too much specificity in legislation, because that's kind of how we got to the point where we are now. But still making sure that there are those guardrails, because then it'll be difficult to evaluate the pilots across the board.
Agreed.
So 4, are we good with omitting that? And then 5, this is actually a different group, the professional learning group, learning tools, and I can't remember the rest of the name. But that's actually another group. So would we feel comfortable omitting 4 and 5?
I'm comfortable with 4, but I want to know a little bit more, because when you've got, for 5, it actually references the professional learning document. I think you shared that with us. Can we see that again?
Sure. And that document is actually, even though it says it's a document, it's actually a working group, a different working group's document, if that makes sense. I'll need to grab that. And then 6 for the compensation, do we want to look at that matrix again, or are we good? Because I'll grab both.
I think it'd be good to put eyes on it.
I agree.
I'll be right back.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, I just put a link to that particular document in the chat. So if anybody wants to go look at it, Kim's sharing, but it's a little bit small for my old eyes. So I put it there in the link.
Oh, it says we need access.
I think I shared it via email to everyone.
Try it again. All right, try that one. That one should work because I put it in my own Google Docs.
There we go. Thank you.
Is that better? Okay.
Do you want to move down document, or are you still looking at number 1?
I think you can move down a little, Kim, and it'll be all right. Hopefully everybody's looking at what I'm looking at, which is your own version of it. I see a lot of people in it now.
Oh, that's good. It's probably easier that way.
I think for me personally, and the support's necessary, and I may be making an assumption here, and you've been more interactive across the different groups, the working groups. Has there been discussion of intervention support for people that might be struggling? Because I see that they've got a list of kind of things, and I don't see notes or anything, but like it's got the adult leadership role listed, it's got beginning teacher support, the new teacher support program. Those are all great, but when you get to a level 3 or a level 4, they're not really going to be in beginning anymore. And how do you support those people to get to that next level other than this menu of options? If people are struggling and they really want to achieve that, is there a progression?
Oh, for the adult leadership or the classroom excellence?
Yeah, or just
So
just
that
to get,
was in the advanced teaching and leader roles
Okay.
group. And they talked about making sure that there's professional support for those teachers.
Okay.
So making sure that they have that there.
Okay. Has there been any discussion anywhere about remediation for anyone who maybe backslides a little bit? You know, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
I
Use
think
a
there was
cliche.
a little bit of that during the advanced teaching and leader group. Because
Okay.
we have 5 districts in there that are ATR districts. And so they
Okay.
were really reflecting on their own experiences to
Right.
help shape this.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Sure.
So for everyone else that's out there, I know, Andrea, you asked a question earlier about support. And Dr. Horn, Allison, you had questions earlier as well. I can't see any other names. I'm sorry the way my screen is set up. Any concerns about, I don't want to necessarily get rid of number 5, but maybe just noting that you know, reviewed in conjunction with another working group, just to acknowledge that we've got a little bit of skin in that game.
I would agree, Dr. Holland, and alerting folks back to that. And I think we also have that. Wait, am I making that up? Where we talked about them not being the teacher of record versus being the teacher of record. That is also an identification of the supports needed for professional progression, because while we know we have a need to get these teachers out in the classroom, it also doesn't set them up for success if we just throw them out there without a classroom excellence teacher or an adult leader teacher.
Right. Okay. Kim, are you okay with that? Just making a reference in this document? If we omit 4 and then just acknowledge with number 5 that we've reviewed the information in a separate working group and are prepared to support that work.
Okay, so do you want to say reference the professional learning and advanced teaching and leader working group documents?
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Other team members?
Yes, I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
Is that good?
That's good for me.
Okay. Oh, and I can show you the compensation piece. Okay. Actually, I think we have. Here's the transitioning current teachers to the new licensure system and salary schedule. So it's taking the current licenses and demonstrating where they could fall. And then the out-of-state teachers. And then, oh, where's the rest of it? Oh, and then that's the actual salary schedule, starting with license 1 through 4. Do we have anything to add to our own brief about this?
want to continue to support the idea of the master's and the national board pay supplement.
Agreed.
I think that needs to be acknowledged in there. And that across the board, there has been an attempt to increase the starting salaries.
Mm-hmm.
So it references it in our document as saying that you would go actually look at the compensation matrix in those slides that I just showed to you. So I don't know if you want to explicitly say it like that or where it talks about it in.
I think it's
in the actual
noteworthy.
slides.
I think it's noteworthy in the addendum to maybe make a note.
Okay.
And Brenda, I see your question. Brenda Berg put in the chat, what evidence do you have a master's degree as evidence of effectiveness? I don't know that there is necessarily, there's evidence out there in some instances that shows that national board is proven to be successful, and then some who would dispute it. The same could be said for any type of advanced degree. But I think serving as a role model for students and becoming lifelong learners has a positive impact. And that's where my passion about this comes from.
So
And I know from,
Oh.
so, but I was just answering Brenda from my personal experience. It made me a better teacher when I went through the experience, and none of my courses were tested. So there wouldn't be any effectiveness data for me. So
I would agree with that. My master's is in curriculum instead of like content specific for middle grades education. And I think that it definitely made a huge difference in my career.
So what do you want to say for this particular item in the addendum?
I'm just going to go on record that that's anecdotal, and I'm very, very, very happy. I mean, we also have lots of examples of lateral entry teachers who are amazing, and we know that there's a real challenge with that pipeline. So I'm just going to go on record as saying $285 million that could fully fund you, both of you with your master's degrees going into leadership roles at a significant pay increase of $10,000 or $20,000 instead of the 10%. I just think we need to be flipping the dialogue. Does not in any way say a master's degree isn't valuable, but I'm on record as saying there are other ways to benefit people who decide to get a master's degree. $285 million. I'm just going to put that on record.
Brenda, when you say to do the 20 to 40% pay raise?
I'm sorry, I'm not following you.
No, so in your comment, you just said that the $285 million, that's what it would take for us to fund a pay supplement for master's degrees, correct?
Fully funded, it is 285. It's currently 210 because it's been grandfathering out.
Right.
But the estimate is it would be $285 million to go back to having a master's degree supplement in perpetuity as opposed to phasing it out. And that money, I believe, when not even one third of our teachers have a master's degree, and there's no evidence that as a group that they are better, in my opinion, we are either taking money away from those other 2/3 who according to statistics are just as good, or we are eliminating the opportunity of using that $285 million for something else, such as the $10,000 to $20,000 pay supplements for advanced teaching roles that a master's degree could qualify you for, in terms of if you took a master's degree that was like gave you the skills to be qualified for that role, not just because you had a piece of paper for a master's program. So I just think it is irresponsible to advocate for something that costs this much, that there is an abundance of evidence that it does not improve outcomes. And if it did, we would see it in student surveys, we'll see it in some of the other effectiveness measures, and those teachers will have greater opportunities to earn more, significantly more money. I just think if we're going to look at this as a paradigm shift, we need to be not constantly trying to go back to what used to be an easy way to say, okay, you're better because you have a master's degree. There is no evidence that supports that. There is evidence that supports that, substantial evidence that supports that for board certification.
I don't know that, Brenda, to your point, anybody thought that a master's degree or a national board made one person better than another. I don't think that was never my intent. My intent is to recognize the benefit of someone going through that process to become better not better than anyone else, but better themselves through an advanced degree. Because when you go into advanced degrees and master's programs and doctoral programs, it's more in depth. So I don't want anybody to think that my advocacy in any way implies that it made me better than anybody else. It made me a better teacher professionally than I was before. And so I think that if we're going to start talking about that, then I also know anecdotally of people who were able to achieve national board certification and never did anything with it to make themselves better as a teacher and had issues with performance. And so that too, anecdotal. So when you start talking about millions of dollars, then I think all of it ought to be on the table philosophically for me. But I think that it goes back to honoring just the advanced degree in a profession that is all about education. So, and again, it's something that, realistically, ultimately, we're not going to get to make the law. So there will be advocates on both sides of the aisle for that one. If it's the group's wish that we not include anything about that, other than maybe just acknowledging that it is part of what is being recommended in the original plan, maybe not from this specific group, if we can agree on that it is in the original plan that master's pay be restored. If that's something that we can agree on and not advocate one way or the other, but just acknowledge that it's there.
So, Marcy and Madison, I just want to remind you that you two ultimately make the decision of whether you will add this to the addendum or not.
We do, but I also want to acknowledge that we've got differing views here, and I think that maybe a compromise, if Madison, if you're in agreement, that we just acknowledge that restoration of master's pay is in the original proposed salary schedule for consideration. Can we agree on that? I don't want anybody to feel like we're trying to slide anything in without at least acknowledging that.
I'm good with that if the group is. I think the finance group before us put a lot of work into the salary schedule. So I think, it's important to recognize, that they did put thought into it. We weren't just throwing numbers around as well.
I appreciate it and I support it.
Does that work?
I'm comfortable with that.
That looks good to me.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Anything else that we want to add here? Was there something else?
Are there any other addendums from the group for consideration?
I have one question about the held harmless. I just saw that on the PowerPoint. What is the phrase held harmless by the compensation model? Does that mean they will not go back to a different pay level if this one were to take effect?
Kim, you want me to field that one?
Sure.
So basically, Allison, yes, the idea is that we had this scenario a few years ago when the General Assembly eliminated longevity pay for teachers and built it into the salary schedule to give greater increases across the state salary schedule. We had instances where we had to review the total compensation of any teacher in comparison to where they would be on the new salary schedule, and hold them harmless to their prior salary if they would have taken a decrease. So we, in many instances, painstakingly went through the process of comparing where they were on the 13-14, I think it was 13-14 or 12-13 salary schedule, plus their longevity in comparison to where they would be on the new state scale, and paid the differential in a separate salary budget code so that it could be tracked and monitored. And each year it would change. So we would go through that process with our teachers. And to Brenda's point, she also put a comment, based on this salary schedule, there would be very few of those where individuals would have to be reviewed for held harmless, because there is more of an increase in this proposed scale than there was back then in the scales that were implemented.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, addendum, thoughts, comments, or concerns?
So, I mean, if there's not any about the actual proposal, could you explain a little bit of kind of like what happens next? Because I know this is our last meeting in this group for this. So what's kind of the process going forward now?
So tomorrow, the last two working group meetings will happen. And then Thursday, there'll be a PEPSC meeting to look at all four of the working group documents and work through any type of details that PEPSC members want to add, change, delete, for something to be sent to the state board in March. And then from those recommendations, the state board can decide what would then be recommended to the General Assembly.
With the hopes that the pilots could roll out in the fall?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the fun starts
Yeah.
for everybody.
Do we feel good about the document?
Appropriate wait time. Which two groups are meeting tomorrow, Kim? Do you know?
Advanced teaching, and professional learning.
Okay.
One is at 9. I believe it's at 9, and the other one's at 1.
The only thing I can think of, Kim, that we've not touched on today is when we referenced last time. I'm looking back over the notes from last time. International faculty. I think that if we just could be that we recommend in the addendum that the transitioning out-of-state teachers could be just transitioning non-North Carolina educators or non-North Carolina teachers. And then there could be a process built in during implementation to figure out where international faculty might actually lie best.
You mean for the compensation piece?
No, for where they come in, because international faculty are going to have to fall on one of these licenses. And so the couple of slides around transitioning out-of-state teachers to the new licensure system and salary schedule could just be transitioning non-North Carolina teachers to the new licensing system and the salary schedule, which would collect information for anybody. I mean, you could have an international faculty or international teacher who comes in who married someone who's moving here from Canada, who's not coming through one of the cultural exchange programs, who's got to be able to apply for a license too. So there's all kinds of non-North Carolina trained folks that are going to have access to licenses.
Okay.
That'd be my only recommendation at this point. I want to see what it looks like when they actually start living in this world.
Okay. Does that sound good?
That captures it. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Then, if we're good,
You guys can get 45 minutes of your afternoon back.
Thank you.
Any other final thoughts, comments? Hearing none, I will dismiss us, I guess. Kim, thank you for your continued support, and everyone else for your thoughts, your kind, thoughtful conversation today. We appreciate you more than you know.
thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks
All right,
so
So much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.